Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Jeremie Hart with me. Jeremie is the recruiting coordinator at SMU and founder of Hustle with Heart. And one of the things I think you're going to hear about his story is when you find something you're passionate about, you're willing to pursue it, whatever the lengths it takes. So, Jeremie, thanks so much for being on today.
No problem, man. I'm glad to be on and share my story with the world and be on here with you. Feel nice to thank you for having me on.
You betcha. So to start your story, it's fun that you're back in SMU now because you're originally from the South Dallas area. So talk a little about growing up, and I know you said, hey, it was on the outside basketball courts that I fell in love with basketball. So talk a little about what it was about basketball that you fell in love with.
I fell in love with basketball at a young age, maybe about 10 or 11 years old. I was playing basketball in my neighborhood at the rec center where I grew up at this Boys and Girls Club, actually. And, it was something that kept me out of trouble, um, something that was positive. You know, I grew up in a neighborhood of a lot of poverty, some negativity. So I tried to find something that was positive and that something that was fun. And basketball was that for me. And I don't remember exactly when I fell in love with the game, but I did about 10 or 11 years old, and we've been in love ever since.
I love it. Now, for you, I know you mentioned, hey, kind of grew up with mom and grandma raising you. Talk a little about, some of the things that you've learned from them and, characteristics that you really hold special to you that you learned from those ladies.
For one, my mom. I'm the youngest of four. My mom had four kids. I'm the youngest of four. I have two older sisters, one older brother. My mom was a single mom. She was a hardworking lady. Um, Things that I took from her is that how hard she worked to provide for us. And she never complained. She was superwoman, to me and my brother and my sisters, and everything that she did, she put her family first, and those are a few things that I took from my mom. And then with my grandma was probably the sweetest lady that I ever met in my life. She her heart was super big. She would, if she had a little, she would give a little bit of the little she had to someone that was in need. And that was something that I took from my grandmother. She told me, as I grew up, to always lend a helping hand to someone. Never think you too big to help someone out, or anything like that. And to treat people with respect, no matter what position or title that they are. And so those are a few things that both of those ladies taught me. And my grandma passed away in 2018, but she had so many sayings and lessons that live on through me, and I carry them with me every day.
I love it, man. I love it. Now, you talked about hard work, and I always think basketball can be a fun thing for certain people, but then all of a sudden there becomes that element of, hey, if you want to play at a collegiate or at a professional level, it turns into work, right? There's a
Right,
whole
right.
next level that it requires. And so talk a little about, as you get into high school and as you start growing and you're really putting in more work, more effort, and just the progression that you saw within your abilities, because you end up, going and playing collegiately. So talk a little about that, those high school years and really growing and developing as a player.
Well, high school was kind of weird for me just because I looking back, I didn't work as hard as I should
Mm.
have. I have my only regret in basketball is that, when I was coming up, I didn't really know what hard work was and what it took to be a really good player. I
Yeah.
was kind of naive. I was kind of naive when I seen really good players or NBA players when I was young. I just thought, it was a magic potion, or they rolled out of bed and they was that good. So I didn't quite understand the work that those guys were putting in. And, obviously it wasn't social media and stuff like that. So you really didn't know how hard a Michael Jordan was working, or,
Yeah.
whoever it may be. I had to learn what hard work really was. And I think when I got to college is when it really hit me, that man, in high school I really wasn't doing nothing, and I was playing off all talent, and I needed to
Mm.
work really hard to get where I was trying to go, and so that was a real eye opener for me. And once I did that, I started to see myself improve and get better. But my only regret, like I said, I wish I would have worked a little bit harder in high school. I probably would have been a little further on, but everything happened for a reason, and I was able to pick it up and play college basketball and then play professional basketball.
I love it. Now, something I want to highlight in what you just said, and someone listening right now may not um, resonate with this in regards to basketball, but they might in their job, right? It's doing the right things and doing it really well and being intentional with it. I think so
Mhm.
often, I'll just use the business world, right? It's not about showing up to the office at 6 a.m. and then staying until 6 p.m. if you're not being intentional with the time you have while you're there, right? Like being
Right.
there for a really long time doesn't make you better. It doesn't get the work done. It just means you were there a really long time. Whereas,
Yeah.
hey, if you can be really diligent, you can do the most important things. Gosh, that's way better. And so, as I hear you say that, I wish I would have worked harder. Sometimes it's like for me, I remember going to the gym and I'm like, I probably could have to the gym for half the amount of time if I just would have went and done the drill really hard, or I would have worked on the right things instead of, I just jacked up some shots for a while.
Yep. Yep. Most definitely. Most definitely. You're 100% correct. 100% correct.
Now, for you, you end up going to a junior college, and
Mhm.
you mentioned, hey, when I got there, it was eye-opening just on the level of effort, but you also decided, hey, I'm going to start putting forth more effort. So talk a little bit about that, kind of changing and increasing the gear that you were going there.
Yeah. So when I got to junior college, I felt like I was working harder, but I also felt, I still wasn't like where I needed to be mentally in my
Hmm.
approach to the game. I love basketball, but I still love other things outside of basketball as well. And I think young players, we all, when we're young, 18 to 22, we struggle with this. You love the game, or some may not love the game. They like the game, and you're trying to figure out how to balance that part and balance, social life or
Hmm.
family life and everything like that. And I think that was something that I still struggle with. Once I started to work harder, I still struggle with, trying to find that balance of where basketball fits in and how hard I needed to work and how hard where I needed to put basketball for me to be ultimately successful. So I picked that up, and I still went through some trials and some errors, and I was able to persevere through those trials and errors, mainly because the love of the game. I think a lot of people play because they like what comes with basketball and what
Yeah.
basketball could do for them. But it's the times where you go through trials. It's the times where you don't get what you want. You work really hard and you don't get what you want. I think that's where the love of the game stands in and helps you persevere through whatever that situation is that you're going through.
I love that. And, I think to your point today in the world of social media, we get a lot more exposure into, the minds of some of the, most elite athletes. And I think something you said is really important, and that is the level of like dedication and desire for something. It's just
Hmm.
different for these types of players versus these players, right? You say,
Hmm.
well, they're
Hmm.
both 6'9", they both can shoot the ball, they're both athletic, but Kobe Bryant had just a different switch, right? If you're,
Right,
saying this is my number one thing, whereas, a young guy might come and be like, hey, I want to go out to the club this weekend. And Kobe's like,
right.
well, if I go to the club though, then I can't get up for my 4 a.m. workout. So I'm just not going to do that so I can do this. I think that
Yep.
is a really important distinction is, well, what's my priority, right? Is my priority the fun things that come with being a, great basketball player at SMU, or is my priority to see how far, how good I can become and how far basketball can take me?
Yep, yep, yep. You're 100% correct. And uh, I didn't know this about Kobe, obviously, when he was when I was young. But as I got older and, started to do my homework and research and things like that, even up until he passed away, God rest his soul, is, his passion and dedication for the game of basketball is like second to none. And, like to the point where people thought he was crazy, and like, man, that's what it takes. That's
Yeah.
why he's Kobe Bryant, right? So if players today could take a piece of his passion, a piece of his work ethic, I mean, they still probably could become really really good players because his was, guys like him and and the greats Michael Jordan and LeBron
Yeah.
James, like their level of passion and dedication and prioritizing the things that they need to do to be successful is just off the radar.
I love it. Now, as the time at junior college kind of comes to an end, you end up transferring first to Washburn. Is that correct?
Yep,
So talk a
yep. I
little bit
went to
about that
Washington.
transition.
Yeah, so I went to Washburn. I was getting recruited by a few low major Division ones.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to Washburn with two of my buddies who transferred from low major Division ones. We all went there together. I feel like it was a good situation for me. I get out to Kansas. It was the first time I left Texas, and like I said, my grandma and my mom and my grandpa, they raised me, and we ended up losing my grandpa the year that I was at Washburn. Got hurt for the first time ever in my career, and the only time ever in my career. I hurt my
Hmm.
ankle really bad, and just dealt with some adversity, and ended up transferring and told my grandma that I would come home and be closer to her and our family, and so I transferred to McMurray University in Abilene, Texas. And I knew that when I got to McMurray that I wanted to be a professional basketball player. And I told myself, like, hey, this is the last shot that you have. Leave no regrets. So I decided to work as hard as I can, and just give everything that I got every day for a full year, and see what happens. And I was blessed to have a really great year and get a job playing professionally. So that was a fun time in my life.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple things I want to break down from that. One of them is just in regards to the actual move, from Washburn to McMurray.
Mhm,
I think sometimes we feel like, hey, I'm making the right choice. And then all of a sudden, it seems like doors are closing, right? Like, man, there's
mhm,
adversity back home, there's,
mhm,
injury, and all of a sudden you're like, man, maybe I'm not in the right place. Maybe there's somewhere that's a better fit for me. And then all of a sudden
mhm,
you get there and you have great success. You have a phenomenal year. And it seems like more doors are opening. I think there's a tough balancing act of like, all right, do I need to keep persevering or are doors closing so I will go pursue a different door that is maybe the better choice for me. So talk a little bit about that for you and just, especially in that season right there.
Well, I think, it goes back to what I said about the love of the game, right?
Yeah.
Like when I went through the things that I went through in my college career, obviously I went to a few different schools. What got me through those things or through the mistakes that I made or whatever the case may be was my love for the game. Like I love the game of basketball, and when I went through a trial or tribulation, I just I persevered so much because my love for the game. I can't say that enough, and
Yeah.
I was able to just find a way to get through it and continue to work really hard. And another thing that I did was, when I made mistakes or when things didn't go my way. I think I did a good job of not, just feeling sorry for myself or like, woe is me, or whatever, and took some accountability to the things that transpired with me. And, and I think that was another reason why I was able to, see the other side.
That's so good. I love it. Now, in the years of playing basketball, you've had a lot of different coaches. And I
Mhm,
think, there's an element of your personality has to mesh with a coach's coaching style, right? And if it doesn't, that can lead to a lot of frustration and,
Right.
resentment towards people. So talk a little about, hey, what's the best way for you to be coached? And then, as you were getting coached, did that ever, start to enter your mind? Hey, maybe someday I would like to coach when this professional playing gets done.
I used to like coaches that was honest with me, that was transparent with me, that built the relationship with me outside of basketball,
Yeah.
that showed that they care for me. To be honest, I didn't have a lot of that. I had it a little bit, and that inspired me, in my coaching career to make sure I coach players the way that I wanted to be coached. But to your other question, um, and to be honest with you, I never thought I would be coaching. I never once told anyone that I would coach basketball when I was done playing. I had
Yeah.
no aspirations of coaching or doing anything with basketball when I got done playing. I literally wanted to play until I was about 40 something years old and ride off into the sunset. My wife, she used to tell me back, I think I was maybe like in year four, year five playing professionally. She would tell me that, hey, I see so much more in you when you're done playing. I think you're going to be coaching.
Mhm.
You're going to start camps. You're going to be training players. And at this time, I was so tunnel vision on just getting better the next day on my game, and I was
Yeah.
like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to be coaching. I'm not going to be doing none of that." So she kind of was the forefront of that and saw, what God had planned for me, and everything that I'm doing now, was really kind of led by my wife and her vision, of what God showed her that He had planned for me, and here I am.
How amazing. So talk a little bit about the playing years. You end up playing 10 seasons overseas.
Mhm.
Um, you know, there are a whole bunch of different countries you play in, which means there's many different leagues. And I'm
Mhm.
sure they are not all created equal, as I have friends that have played and they share stories from
Yeah,
different leagues. So talk a little bit
yeah.
about, getting started overseas. And yeah, I mean, it was hard to go to Washburn, which is, a few states away, but now all of a sudden you're in a different country away from family. So talk a little bit about, acclimating to new environments.
I wanted to be a professional basketball player. That's always been my dream and my
Yeah.
goal. And once I achieved that and got to experience another country, another culture, it was great. I had a great time. I learned a lot. I got to see so much of the world. Looking back, I tell people now, like, man, I wish I would have played for about 5 years and started my coaching career a little sooner. But I don't regret nothing. It was a fun experience. Like I said, I learned a lot. I got to see a lot. Got to experience a lot of different things. Meet a bunch of people. Um,
Yeah.
have some friends around the world now and stuff like that. So it was a great experience. Great experience overall. It was a great experience.
I love it. Now, for you, acclimating from, the different styles as well. I think, geographically, different countries play different styles of basketball, and you're trying to figure out, well, how does my game fit into, this team? And, sometimes you're only with a team for one season and then you're off to the next one. So you don't get that continuity. You're just trying to figure out where you fit in and how you fit in the style. So talk a little bit about, the adaptation of your game over time, depending on geographically where you're at or certain teams and what the team needed versus, hey, what's, Jeremy's best attribute on the court.
Yeah, well, uh, every league or every country has its challenges or different variations of what they want from the Americans or stuff
Yeah.
like that. But most of the places I played, they wanted the Americans, to be the guys.
Yep.
They wanted you to lead and wanted you to show up every game and get W's. So it was kind of really the same for me. Most places that I played throughout my career, it was about winning, leading the team, making a big impact on the game every night, and getting a victory. So
I love it. Now, you mentioned, hey, at some point your wife brings up to you, all right, I could see, a coaching future for you. And you said, I haven't really ever even thought about that. So a seed was planted, if you will. But
mm,
talk a little bit about, your guys' relationship. And I mean, really, I can only imagine, stress that comes along with being, international, but also the closeness that it can bring, being together and being in places that are unfamiliar.
yeah, I think you know a lot of my challenges and trials that I've been through shaped me to who I am today, and shaped my wife and my family. Um, I look at my coaching career so far, and having how I've gotten to where I'm at right now. Um, it's through the game of basketball, and the way that I went through the things that I went through as a player, that I was able to do the things that I've done so far in my coaching career. Having to go to a few different schools in college, not playing as much as I thought I should be, or learning how to work hard, what it takes to be a really good player. Those
Yeah.
things just shape me. And even going back further to my mom and my grandma, like those women are hardworking women, and my mom, she worked hard no matter what. Whatever
Mm.
job that she had, she gave 110%, and tried to take care of her family with it, whether she was getting paid a whole lot or whether she was getting paid a little bit. And I took that from her, and just letting hard work be a part of who I am, and not, working hard for a result, or for to get something in return. I wanted people to know, like, hard work is who I am. And when I started to get into the coaching world and player development and things like that, I told myself one way that I would make myself different from a lot of trainers or player development coaches or assistant coaches will be my work ethic. I think if I could show my work ethic and how hard I work, how willing I am to be in the gym with guys, to watch film with guys, to just outwork the next person. It would give me where I needed to go. And so that's kind of, I know I bounced around a little bit, but yeah, that's kind of how that was.
I love it. Well, and something that I think is amazing about work ethic is it's the great equalizer, right? Someone could
Mhm.
be, in life they, have a more, financially beneficial upbringing, or they had, this perk or that perk. And it's like, but at some point, the work ethic is what's going to be the differentiator, right?
Mhm.
And, as we continue to go through your story, like you've proven that, and it's why you're at where you're at. And it's why I'm excited to watch your journey in 10 years from now, see where the heck you're the head coach at. Like it's
No
just going to
doubt.
be fun because you've got that work ethic, and that's a differentiator. And people see that, when they get around you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's kind of what the message that I wanted to instill. You can be the most talented guy, or have all these attributes about yourself, physical attributes about
Mhm.
yourself. But if the old saying, man, hard work outbeats talent.
Yep.
When talent don't work hard. So that's kind of what I base my life on. And I remember being in high school, looking back. In high school, I wasn't a five-star recruit. I wasn't a four-star recruit. But I ended up, playing a long, quite some time, and experienced a lot of things. And a lot of guys who were five-star recruits or four-star recruits when I was in high school, I kind of became a better player than them, or outplayed them, or whatever. And it wasn't because of skill, or anything that I have physically. It's just because of my work ethic, and my willingness to just continue to improve and work hard.
I love that. Well, and so it's interesting. I had a gentleman on the podcast named Rich Davini, and he was in the Navy SEALs, and he talks about sometimes the people that have had the most, I don't want to say easiest path, but the most beneficial path in sports oftentimes don't work out the best in future like Navy SEAL type things because they've always been the best. And so, they just have this assumption of, well, if I just show up, like I'll probably be better than
It's gonna
most
be
people and
easy.
I'll qualify. Yeah. Whereas you get someone who maybe they didn't have all the best attributes and they had to really work hard to get there. And it's like, hey,
Mm,
I realize like I have probably above average skill, but I'm gonna have to do the work ethic part. Otherwise, this just isn't gonna work out for me.
yeah, yeah, most definitely, most definitely. I remember, I took my first coaching job was in Canada. I went to Canada to coach, and COVID hit, and
Yep.
we lose our job, and I come home, and my college coach, he called me, and he talked me into. He was the one who talked me into going back to school because I
Yeah.
left college in 2010 without graduating, and I remember when he called me, and he told me, he said, "Hey man, like, you need to go back to school and get your degree. Like, you're already coaching. I see you being a high major Division I coach and NBA coach, but you're not gonna be able to do it if you don't get that degree." And I knew that I didn't have you know 6 or 3 or 9 hours to graduate. I knew that number was a pretty high number, and but I also knew that if I could persevere through the things that I went through as a player, that I could overcome that. And I used that 2 years during COVID to go back to school, and I passed 62 hours to graduate.
Yeah.
And that was very accomplishing for me because becoming the first one in my family to graduate, the first one in my neighborhood. To graduate, after being out of school for 10 years. That's something that I'm most proud of.
As you should be. That's a huge deal, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, as you look at that, I think about that conversation that the coach had with you, and I think that's one of the amazing things that you're gonna, continue to just experience in your life is how important that coaching relationship can be, right? Because that
Mm-hmm.
coach clearly he cared about you more than just Jeremy, the basketball player for me for 2 years. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, even after all of that, right? I mean, what, a decade later he still
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, I'm going to reach out and give you some words of wisdom because I see something in you." And I think that's the great thing about coaching that you quickly realize is, don't get me wrong, I have the job because of basketball, but the job is more than just basketball, right? I've got
Right.
18 to well, I mean, with COVID years, 18 to 25-year-old men, right? Right.
Right.
That
Right.
age range goes up a little bit more, but you say, and I'm getting the opportunity to have an impressionable moment in their lives and
Mm-hmm.
create a relationship that who knows, how long this can last. And so talk a little bit about your coach and your relationship and then how you're trying to, tie that into the players that you get to connect with today.
Yeah. Well, I have two coaches that I'm really close to that coach me. My JUCO coach, Kevin Gill, he's the head coach at McClendon Junior College in Waco, Texas. I think this year is his 24th or 25th season at the same place. He's from Waco. He's just a great guy. I actually hung up with him this morning before we hopped on. And I haven't talked to him in a while, and he texted me and called me yesterday, and I missed his call. And he's like a dad to me because I missed this
Awesome.
call, and he made sure to text me and tell me to call him back. He's a mentor to me, and I haven't played for that guy since 2006, 2007, and our relationship is super strong. And he's taught me a lot about the business and just about life in general. And then Ron Holmes, who was my coach at McMurray, he was the coach at McMurray for 30 years. His name is on the court there. He's probably the all-time winningest coach at McMurray or one of them. He's just a great guy, and he's a guy who called me in 2020. He called me to check on me, because of COVID and us being on lockdown and things like that. And throughout our conversation, he just told me, I needed to go back to school. And our initial conversation, I told him no. I said, Coach, I can't. I don't see that in my future. He called me back maybe 2 days later. I thought about it and talked to my mom about it and my wife, and he ended up calling me back, and I told him that I was gonna do it. So he kind of got me started with my first volunteer assistant job at a Division III, Mary Hardin-Baylor, where I graduated from, and I was a volunteer assistant. I went back to school and I was doing PD there, and I would drive back to Dallas. I think Belton to Dallas is about an hour and 45 minutes. So I
Huh.
would drive back and forth, doing player development in Dallas with high school, with middle school and high school kids, but also being a part of the staff at the Division III I was at, just learning about, the coaching world and business, and things like that. And while going to school and having 18 hours a semester. So it was quite a challenging time, 2020 to 2022, but it really shaped me. It
Yeah.
really molded me into who I am. And I remember in 2022 when I graduated May 7th, um, I got a call from Coach Jerome Tang, and Coach called me and just told me how he got the job at Kansas State, and if I had any players that I was working with that I thought were good enough to let him know, because me and Coach had a great relationship. I have a great relationship, and um, that was the conversation initially. Then I was offered a assistant job at Duncanville High School with David Peavy, and I told him yes. Um, I ended up going to get fingerprinted for the job at Duncanville. I was getting fingerprinted. I told my wife I was taking a job, a high school job. I go get fingerprinted, and I'm leaving out from getting fingerprinted, and I get in my car to head home, and I'm all like excited, like, oh yeah, I'm about to be coaching high school at Duncanville. This is
Yeah.
what God got for me. And Coach Tane calls me as I get in my car, and I had not spoke to him for maybe a month and a half, 2 months, and he was like, "Hey, young fella, um, I got a spot for you at Kansas State to come be my grad assistant, and do player development with our best players and get you in the business." And I just was stunned. I
Yeah.
couldn't say nothing. And coach was like, "Hey," he's like, "Hey man, you good? You all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, coach, I'm good." He's like, "Well, why are you so quiet?" And I was like, "I'm sitting here trying to think how I'm gonna go home and tell my wife that I'm not gonna take this high school job. I'm gonna come to Kansas State." And so we laughed about that, and I went home and told my wife what I was doing and what I wanted to do, and she was intrigued, and wanted to know more about what I chose to do, and but she was very supportive, and we went to Kansas State, and obviously we had a great year at Kansas State and went to the Elite
Yeah.
Eight, and the rest was history.
So there's a couple of things I want to dive into there. One is, so I had Alan Stein on the podcast, and he, helped coach the math at Montrose, and that's where, he and um, Kevin Durant were able to connect. And well, anyway, he, got the opportunity to train a lot of NBA players, and he goes, "It's all because I said yes to helping high school athletes." Right? That's how the NBA happened for me. And I think so frequently we look and we say, "Oh, well, Jeremy's at SMU. I mean, like, gosh, I'm sure." It's been an easy path. No, I volunteered at a Division III school.
Hmm.
That's not an overly sexy job. Like anyone that
No,
doesn't know much about volunteering at D3 schools, I played at an NAIA school. So it's like, hey, this isn't the ESPN Saturdays, all those things,
yeah, no doubt.
but it's the love of the game.
Yeah, I don't want to make myself sound bigger than anything that I am, but what I can tell you is, um, from 2020 to 2022, when I was volunteering at University of Mary Hardin-Baylor, Belton, Texas is, like I said, is about an hour and 45 from Dallas. So a lot of the money that I made playing professional basketball, I put into going back to school and living in Belton, and things that I needed out there. And so I would drive back to Dallas, a lot of times to train the middle school kids who kind of got me started in player development. And a few of those middle school kids that I was working with, I knew their dads really well, and their dads, was real adamant about asking me to work with their son, and they felt like I was somebody that they could trust, and you
Yeah.
know they had never seen me train, had never seen me work with another player, and I even told them I was like, hey, I don't know how to train nobody else. Like I don't know what you see in me, but I might not be the guy. And they was like, no, you are the guy. I want my son to have your work ethic and da 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 da. And that's kind of how it went. And I started with a few guys, and the few guys that I started with, are let's just say they're doing really well. They're on their way to being really great college players and potentially NBA players. I do have one that's in the NBA, Dennis Jenkins, a kid that I started with in his 11th grade going into his senior year. He's a rookie with the Detroit Pistons, and so I looking back, I'm like you said, I'm glad that I said yes to those parents, and because it helped me understand what player development is and how to take a kid who has some talent or has some skill and just guide them, and also for me to get better as a coach and to get better at player development as well. So those days really shaped me as well.
I love it, man. That's so cool. Now, in addition to that, so you're at Kansas State, and I mean
Mhm.
Duncanville is a great job, right? I mean that's got a good history of great players, but
Mhm.
the college route is just more attractive to you, so that's where you go. But talk a little bit about that conversation with your wife, and just having that support, right? I think that is one of the hardest parts about being a coach that I'm sure is married is like, well, there's someone else that's got to move with me. And now we've
Yeah,
made the move from Texas to Kansas, Kansas to New Mexico, New Mexico back to Texas, within
yeah,
what, 3, 4 years? So talk a little bit about that.
yeah. Within 3 years, my wife actually didn't come with me to Kansas, so um, I had to research and do my homework on what a GA was, and being a GA, I had no idea of what being a GA consisted of, on
Yeah.
a day-to-day basis. So, my wife, like I said, she didn't go with me. I moved to Manhattan. Shoot, I made $1,200 a month.
Yeah.
My wife, she was very, very supportive. When she visited, she saw, the vision that I had, and she told me one day, like, okay, hey, I understand, what it is that you're chasing,
Yeah.
and what you're trying to do. And so that was real confident for me, and then I'm obviously to my first year in Division 1 to go on the run that we went on, and experience the NCAA tournament, something that I watched as a kid my whole life. And then to go to the Sweet 16 and to the Elite Eight was just phenomenal. And for my wife to be there to experience it with me was everything that I could ask for.
I love it. Well, then from Kansas State, we go to New Mexico State. Talk a little bit about the transition there, and then obviously now we're in SMU.
Yeah, you know, I I I figured I had the kind of mentality where we went on a deep run at Kansas State, and I felt like if I wanted a full time job as an assistant or in the NBA, I needed to strike while the iron was hot.
Yeah.
So I went out and tried to see what was out there for me, and I had some opportunities, and I get a call from Jason Hooten one day, and Coach Hooten offered me the job at New Mexico State, and you know, it wasn't that job wasn't as attractive because of what transpired in New Mexico State the year before and the things that they had go on, but I just felt like from a title standpoint and just a position standpoint that it was a good move for me.
Yeah.
So I decided to do it, and we it was a challenging year, obviously, because of the team that we had, and everything that they was coming back from the year before, or whatnot. But I learned a lot from Coach Hooten, and I appreciate him giving me the opportunity to become a full-time assistant. And in April, I caught wind that Coach Enfield got the job at SMU doing the Final Four, and I was headed to where did I go? I was headed to New York to go pre-draft with my kid with Danish Jenkins. He was finishing at St. John's, so I went out there to pre-draft with him for 2 weeks. And while I was there, made a connection with Rick Pitino, and Rick Pitino was the head coach of the Boston Celtics, and
Yeah.
Andy was his assistant. So the connection was there, and uh, Rick kind of told Andy like, "Hey man, like this is the guy, especially the guy from Dallas that you need." And I came and interviewed for the job, and coach offered me the job, and happy to be home and super blessed for this opportunity.
Yeah. Now, I love the progression here and how we've gotten to where we're at SMU. Now, one of the
Mhm.
things that I think is great is so the hustle with heart, and the training that you've done, the player development you've done with high caliber players.
Mhm.
I mean, sets you up perfectly to be doing, what you're doing now at a high level Division I team. So talk a little about, using your experience and what developed yourself, but how you've been able to coach and really connect with players and drive, their ability to get better as well.
Well, one thing I realized, through my wife speaking life into me, what I was going to be doing. I remember one day I was sitting at home, um, and I had got asked a couple times. It was maybe like 2017. I was at home for the summer from overseas, and I was getting asked by a few parents to train their kid. And I remember sitting by myself one day, and I was like, man, like maybe like this is a sign from God that that I'm supposed to be doing this. I keep getting asked to
Yeah.
work with these kids, um, and I thought to myself like, well, shoot, man, like I turned myself into a player. I didn't have a trainer or a player development coach or anything like that. I used to sit in the gym for 3 4 hours and create drills or and help myself get better and taught myself how to watch film for real. So it was like, I kind of a light switch hit, a click with me that, like, man, God has been grooming me to be, a coach,
Yeah.
for a long time. I just didn't see it. And then talking about the space of working with the kids that I work with in Dallas, um, I always wanted to create my own value. So I learned that if I could create my own value and my own leverage, that I could be okay in this business. And what I mean by that is, um, I wanted to work with players that nobody really knew or nobody cared to talk about, because one thing that I did saw or see when I started to train and do player development was a lot of trainers and a lot of guys, they was working with players who were high profile guys,
Yeah.
or, guys that people talked about all the time. So they was already good, and not to say that, that they wouldn't help them continue to improve, but it was just like, like, man, it's not really that hard or it's not as hard to take this kid. He's already a 5-star kid and he could play. It's not really that hard to
Yeah.
help him get to the next level. So what I decided to do, I said, man, I'm gonna work with kids who nobody knows, have some talent, but just don't have the right guidance like I had, and I believe that I could help them become really good players. And that's what I did. And, a couple of those kids are playing at high major Division Ones, around the country. A couple of them are in the NBA right now. So I think that's kind of where I created my value and respect from people in the basketball world, because as people to this day that tell me like, man, I see your kid for the Pistons, and I remember in 2019 when he was going to Pacific, you guys were posting videos from y'all
Yeah.
workouts, on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. I remember him, at Pacific, and we talking about. I don't think nobody from Detroit Pistons knew who that kid was in
Right.
2019. So that's the satisfaction for me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I wanted to create that value for myself. Knowing that if I could create value for myself and not get something because of somebody else, that I could make myself valuable in the coaching world and in the business.
I love it. Well, Jeremy, I want to say thanks for sharing your journey and your story, man. And I'm excited to continue to watch all the amazing things you're going to do. One, this season, but two, in your career. And we'll have to do this again in 3 years. And like I said, who knows? You might be a head coach somewhere by then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll see what God has planned for me, man. I appreciate you having me on, man. Appreciate you.